Welcome to the Coactive Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Justin Hibbs, and today I'm thrilled to bring you a conversation with someone who has been making significant waves in the world of AI and digital marketing. It's an absolute honor to introduce Angel Brown, the CEO of Locomotion. Angel has an impressive background, having held pivotal roles at Digitus Health and Real Chemistry, where she led transformative AI and data-driven marketing strategies, especially in the healthcare sector. Angel's work has redefined how brands engage with their audiences, and her insights are reshaping the way marketers think about the future of our industry. Today, we're going to dive into Angel's approach to harnessing AI for engagement and her vision for what's next. Angel, welcome to the show. It's a true privilege to have you here.
Nice to be here, Justin. Great. Yes.
So let's start with Locomotion. Tell us a little bit about your firm, what you focus on.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you mentioned that I've been working in many of the big agencies. I've had a long career. I have recently, though, decided to start my own agency. And Locomotion, we believe we're a next generation agency. We bring together some of the newest technologies using AI throughout the process. But also we're interested in immersive tech because of the new opportunities we're starting to see with the metaverse coming on the horizon.
So tell us, how do these projects shape your approach in using AI, immersive technology? How does that shape marketing as an industry?
I've been involved with machine learning for some time. I guess it's been about a decade. And the techniques that we were using were largely for insights at the beginning. It was to understand trends out there that might shape creative. But increasingly, we started to build tools. I'll describe it in that way. For example, Salesforce Einstein was very instrumental in CRM. We started to think about the customer journey. We started to think about the next best action and how we might drive that with data. And we were using machine learning behind the scenes. But of course, ChatGPT appeared on the scene, which has caused momentous change in how we look at many aspects of marketing. I think the earliest things out of the gate were probably around content creation. Marketers jumped on these tools to look at how to ideate text, images, create a brand image library. Many of the pharma companies I've talked to have set up departments to do this. It's not trivial, however, because of the constraints, and we're still struggling with how might we control in a brand way the outputs of AI. And that is going to be a bit of a journey. We're still in early stages there. I think what's most interesting, perhaps, and I just came back from San Francisco, where Dreamforce was happening, Salesforce's new agentic narrative. So we're looking at ways to bring together functions and features from our brand experiences that were typically siloed. And I've seen some very interesting demos, and this is aligned to the work that we're doing at Locomotion, where you have a conversational interface that knows about the customer across a broad range of data points. This, of course, has always been the idea around omnichannel engagement, but with the benefit of AI, that interface can deliver those insights and actually do things with the agentic narrative, and vision, if you will. The idea is that it's not just being able to talk to us, but it's actually able behind the scenes to make those kind of changes. So I think the shift that we're seeing there, if I were to unpack it a bit more, is that AI is going to mediate all of the experiences that are delivered digitally, and digital is going to start creeping into our real lives as well, where you might go to a healthcare clinic, for example, and you may have a character there who might meet you, and you would then have a discussion with them. And I'm thinking, you come home, then you may have on your iPad, for example, a character who would talk about your post-therapy treatment requirements or recommendations. And so we're starting to build a sense of a human interface. When we talk about marketing, we tend to think about campaigns, we tend to think about creative, we tend to think about advertising, imagery, think about the customer journey and how we might deliver those over touch points. But I think some of the most interesting things, those will be mediated and directed by AI as well, given the information that we have, because we're gathering much more information about our users. But the part I guess I'm most interested in is the part where it comes alive and you can then interface with a brand in a way through an interface that looks like a human.
Much more immersive.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think it's quite exciting. That doesn't mean that you're not going to have advertising, say paid advertising on a digital channel that will be a character in itself. But as you click through to a more owned property, that
Sure.
the handover there would then become more of a, okay, let's now enter a conversation. And
Correct.
that character would know about your interactions with that brand over time.
Truly fascinating. Two words you mentioned. You mentioned next best action, which I know
Yes.
is very central to many campaigns.
Yes.
Talk to me about problems that you see
Yeah.
marketers attempting to solve.
Yeah, with next best action, absolutely. The holy grail is one-to-one marketing at scale, of course. And we as strategists plot out that customer journey very neatly, and we want to move our customers along it and to create a deeper engagement with our brand. Next best action is the way that we can use data-driven insights to make sure that what we are serving them is relevant to them. So that will give us the best chance for that shift that we're looking for at that point in the journey. Now, that sounds easy, but it is not easy because we know as strategists that people do not move in a very orderly way along the customer journey. They go back and forth, and there's a lot of things that happen over here. Oh, someone told you about the brand. And we don't have all of the data presented to us in a way that allows us to make very clear decisions often. And AI often also muddies the water. We might know, for example, that this marketing campaign was successful, more successful than the last in moving from A to B. However, we don't often know why with AI. And this is the problem thinking about it now as a creative. What am I going to serve this person next or in the future? By these insights, it's not always clear. We know it worked, but why and what do we do next? So that's a constant issue for us. We also struggle with the kind of tension between really knowing who we want to target at a specific point along that journey, but also how to reach them, because you don't always have the data points. I'm thinking about something I worked on earlier this year, which is around vaccines. And the pharma company didn't have enough money to do a scattergun marketing approach. They wanted to be hyper-focused, hyper-targeted. And pharma companies are increasingly talking about this because they know now this is the point. They bought into the idea of the customer journey. They know this is the point. What's the next best action?
That's right.
Yeah. At that point, what do we really want to send? Show them, present to them. But the problem often is then that it's not possible to exactly get them at that point. So I'm thinking about the vaccine. So we knew it was after they had booked. But if you got them too early, then they wouldn't want to make an appointment for the vaccine. And if it was too late, it was too late because the vaccine needed to have had something like a month before it would actually be effective. So you have the tension between, okay, so at this stage, how do we get people at that point? So as marketers, we try and work that out. And the problem is the more targeted you are and the more precise with your data strategy, sometimes then the volumes become too low for the algorithm or the particular channel that you're trying to activate on. And so you wind up then with, okay, we have to go a bit wider on this. And maybe that's okay because we know in media that going wider is a better strategy than being too narrow because of these kind of functionalities and things like that. So I think it's a dance that we have to do between what's possible to target with what we want to target, but then understanding at that stage who is really at that point and whether we need to segment even further, because we might know that there are different stakeholders at that point, perhaps. For example, in this case, there was a business stakeholder, a business consumer, and then there was a consumer who was going on a family holiday. So you would want different messaging for each of those, but at that specific point. So the more, as a marketer, the more precise you get, the less able you are to let the AI do what it's really great at, which is find the patterns.
That's
Yeah.
right.
So that dance that I still find quite troubling.
Balancing act, indeed.
Yeah.
As a tenured marketer, you've been in multiple roles. You said something interesting a minute ago about taking a step back and allowing AI do what it's
Yes.
really good at.
Really great at. Yeah.
Where
Yeah.
do you feel the marketer's role is evolving to?
I think if you understand what the AI is trying to do, that is essential to the marketer. I don't think that we can bypass the data step because companies have limited funds. If you could just do a scattergun approach and let the AI find the people that respond, I think you could then give it a ton of creative and then it would find the answers. But that is never the right strategy for us. We have to focus on who is going to make the most impact on driving our brand objectives. And so that's where you need to ensure it's something that we've been doing for ages, is having a decent data strategy. And I do want to say something about this point specifically, because it's a shift that I saw in the last year. I know it's been brewing for some time, but I think it's really starting to happen now. And that is where the AOR agency is often the brand strategy lead agency, and they're the ones that come up with the creative for the campaign. And then typically the considerations around digital would happen later. And
Correct.
so in my career, I have been mostly on the digital side. So I was used to being at the end, but increasingly I've been at the high table in the last 5 years, I'd say, because people have recognized that the digital and the data strategy particularly really needs to be part of the business strategy. And then once you get your objectives set there, then you can involve the creative agency instead of the way it used to be, which was the other way around. And that's a massive shift that I've seen. And some of the problems in that space are where I've also seen in the Publicis group, where I've had most of my career, agencies that have, for example, bought media, doing the data strategy, and then as part of the business strategy, bought the media. And then the creative agencies, we just have to fill in all the boxes.
Right.
So that's danger that we may see coming. And I think over the next few years, we've got to figure out that balance between the creative comms and the digital strategy as part of the business strategy, how best to these to work together. Because what we've seen in the case of Publicis with the big Pfizer win, which was huge for them, that the creative company actually they decided not to use them anymore, and Publicis got the wider strategy because the two agency approaches jarred and they couldn't work together.
Right.
And I've seen that in other instances as well.
So let's pause there for a minute if we can. You mentioned something that more and more you began to be brought into the scenario from the get-go. And what were the things that prompted that the most? Was it the client saying, we really want your opinion and strategy and expertise, Angel, from the get-go? Or was it you saying, we're not seeing the outcomes we should see, I need to be more involved from the get-go? Talk to me a little bit about how that occurred and how that continues to occur.
From a personal perspective, now that's quite interesting because I'm a little bit unusual because I have been digital since the beginning of the internet.
Sure.
But I've also been on the creative side, on the creative marketing comms side. So what I've been able to do, and also the product side. So what pharma companies, who are largely my clients, have recognized that I have something around the innovation space that other marketers perhaps don't have. And the way I've been able to give that impression is because of design thinking and the way that I present myself as an innovator with these methods that have come through my UX experience.
Sure.
Now, UX has become a field that is in trouble at the moment because of all the tech layoffs and everything. And people think now that there's a tension between UX and AI and data. So the new idea is, data will tell us, data will give us the insights. We don't need to really understand the user so much because the signals will be there in the data. I think that's at the back of these kind of perceptions now. But for me, putting my expertise or getting my expertise in design thinking has been very interesting because pharma companies think innovative, and innovative means data, innovative means digital. And so I personally have been very interesting to them, and I won a lot of pitches from this kind of presentation because they didn't think they were losing the creative because of the design thinking approach.
Right.
I don't know how interested they were in users, but pharma companies tend to be very interested in research because that's risk, it mitigates risk, etc. And they feel like it, especially because they're complex organizations. I do a lot of international work as well. So if you have the research behind you, it's much easier to get people to buy into what you want to do as a global organization. So I think that's all been very important to my personal approach. It's been like a modern marketing pitch, if you will, that's tied into data strategy, innovation, and sorry. Yeah, sorry. I'm distracted.
That was a wonderful response.
Yeah.
In your current role as CEO at Locomotion, you seem to really thrive at that intersection of design, technology.
Yeah.
You mentioned some of this. How do you and your firm currently use AI to push those boundaries of digital engagement, really optimizing it? We'd love to know just some examples of how you're using that today.
Yeah. So at Locomotion, we're small. So this is my own firm, so we're growing. So I do quite a lot of consultancy to enterprise pharma clients. And in that space, we are talking about the customer journey. We're talking about the media plans. We're talking about the data strategy, etc. So the AI is implicit in all that. Personally, when we were thinking about ideating or doing creative, we're using all the tools. We're just using them for ideation. We have not made any automated workflows for what we do ourselves. If there are automated workflows that will help the client, we would raise that as an opportunity, but that's, I think, still an emerging space. I think what we would typically be doing in the enterprise is working with the teams that are doing the digital infrastructure, and they would then be providing us with the AI applications that they have, the tool set. This is typical. Now, where it gets more interesting for me is the innovation work that we're doing, which is we are actively building a product for early dementia for older people who increasingly want to stay at home, but are losing their faculties and their cognitive function. And so we are looking at the intersection there of the conversational AI with the immersive tech.
Fascinating.
So that is really... that's the fun stuff, if you will. The day job is perhaps the larger enterprise stuff, which is, it's like a tanker enterprises. And so the amount of influence you can have on the infrastructure, just all these things take time. You generally are working with what they've got already.
Of course. If you were to offer, particularly with your expertise, if you were to offer marketers today who are interested in learning more about AI, perhaps not taking it on, right, hands-on.
Yeah.
What would or let's reset. What would your recommendation be, Angel, for other marketers, creatives in this space who want to learn more about AI, its capabilities as it converges with marketing and so many other industries that we see?
I don't think it's for everyone doing what I did. Absolutely. Getting my hands dirty with Python code. I'm enjoying that though, because I'm a techie as well.
Sure.
I love all that stuff. So but I don't think that's necessary. What I do think is necessary though, is to really understand where the opportunities are coming from, the level of their own role, but also I suppose for the clients. So looking at these tools themselves, all the generative stuff, playing with it, to understand it more than anything, I think is important. Really understanding the algorithm. What we find, and it's so difficult in agencies, is that you'll have the people who are creating the medical content, for example. These people have PhDs, they're medical writers, etc. But they don't understand what is necessary for the algorithm. And that's a big issue. So I think there's a big need for people to understand. When I say the algorithm, that could be either the next best action algorithm or a media algorithm, which is essentially trying to do the same thing, serve the right thing to the right person at the right time. So understanding the constraints and the opportunities of the use of AI is really important. Adopting the test and learn approach, so thinking in terms of experiments, this is hard for us in agencies because of the cycles. The approval takes so long. So the idea of doing something quick and dirty and then doing something else iteratively is very awkward. But what we as a field need to do, we need to be able to test and learn. So we need to work towards those types of iterations, and getting the regulatory people on board early is really important because they don't understand. They're very fearful of the loss of control because AI makes its own decisions. And so getting them involved very early. Things like, yeah, absolutely. As like the conversational AI, there's a sense that what the LLM says is biased and all this, but there are ways to control it. And so being sure that you understand how to do that and the limitations, the current limitations, because now we have RAG where we can pull information from distinct sources that are identified, that are approved, but still there, because of the stochastic nature of it, it still could say something else. And so as an AI field, all the researchers are trying really hard to solve that problem, to stamp out the last hallucinations, which will be essential for our world in healthcare. We really can't do anything if we can't be sure.
Absolutely. You were in a recent talk at the university or at Birmingham City, and you talked about the frontier of conversational AI-powered agentic beings. Talk to us about that. So many of us, when we hear things of innovation in the industry and so forth, we don't get or grasp what that means. That for us a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So in that talk, I talked about Autogen, which is a multi-agent collaborative framework. This is a little bit distinct from what we saw at Dreamforce, where they were saying it's Agentforce now, because you can imagine Salesforce has long had multiple components that were AI driven. And so they're just actively now putting them all together to reduce those silos. And it's a great thing for companies like them because they have so much already. It's just like putting a new veneer over the top and calling it something else that sounds
Absolutely.
But the Autogen, it was fascinating. And the case study that I showed there was really interesting. And I'm going to digress a little bit because this is cool.
Please, that's fascinating.
Yes. So what we were looking at, we were exploring the Autogen framework as a possibility for what we were doing on our innovation project there, the one I mentioned. And so what a multi-agent framework is, in our case, we were looking at the orchestrator. So there's an LLM sitting at the top as the orchestrator. And then in the case that we were looking at, we had a web surfer who was an agent powered by an LLM that could go and get information from the web. We had an assistant.
For listeners who don't know what an LLM is, it's a large
language model. Yeah. So just think of ChatGPT. It's essentially, we were using GPT-4 actually. So we have an assistant who can write Python code, but also can add additional opportunities that the orchestrator asks for. We also had a computer terminal who simply ran the code. So that function was discrete there. So what we were looking at was the Gaia data set. Now, Gaia is a set of tasks, I think it was 350 or so, broken into 3 different tiers. The first tier involves one tool and a certain number of steps. It would be quite a simple thing like, of a clinical trial, how many participants were in it or something, or how many participants had a specific feature. Something that's quite simple for a human to do. The second one would involve perhaps computer vision. It would have to then, the agents that we had didn't have a computer vision agent, so it would have to download a tool to do that computer vision. So the input from Gaia might have been an image. So identify specifics from an image, for example. Or there was one that was an MP3 of a recipe, someone talking about a recipe for strawberry shortcake. And they wanted to know the fruit ingredients. So there are 3 tiers of tasks. And the first one was the one that we examined, and that was level 1, and there were 53 of those. Now, the researchers who created this data set were thinking about AGI, artificial general intelligence. And I was interested in this because I want my character to be like Data from Star Trek.
Of course.
Dimensionally.
Love it.
And so that would require AGI. So I thought, let's take a look at this. How far does it go? Interestingly, they typically, not humans do 99% of these tasks, but only 15% of the whole data set. There, it was slightly higher for the level 1, as I remember. But anyway, so what we were doing was running these tasks with it's a Microsoft AutoGen framework with the orchestrator scenario. And we were looking at the log results with the view to optimizing this collaboration. So one of the things that I found really interesting was that the creativity in trying to find the answers to these tasks was unexpected and scary in some ways, but exciting in other ways. So the orchestrator does a strategic job. That in itself was interesting to me because we tend to think about AI doing, the manual stuff. Oh, it's like a smart intern. But actually, the orchestrator was the one who very effectively broke down under headings that it was given. What do we know? What do we need to know? What kind of educated guesses might we make? Who is my team? And then it said, who do I need to do the first task? And it might ask, okay, go to the web surfer. Can you please find this search result? And the task that I presented in the talk was one that was for like a Dewey Decimal System for Bielefeld. On the Bielefeld Knowledge Bank, what is the flag for, I can't remember it exactly, but you get a sense of what the task was. To do it as a human, you'd go to the knowledge bank, you would search for a particular year, you'd look at the results, choose the language, and then you'd see what flags are there. And that's where there was a tool required for computer vision. Yeah. So anyway, the web surfer, after going through many times, couldn't find it. And the orchestrator then says, web surfer, can you explain the difficulties that you are having with finding this information? It was very human.
Wow, of course.
And I know. And then the web surfer said,
what are you experiencing, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Wow.
And the web surfer, in a very human way, says, I'm afraid I'm having difficulties with this because I cannot use the advanced search function on that page.
Wow.
I cannot get behind it. Yeah. And so the orchestrator says to the assistant, can you think of any other ways to do this? And the assistant goes, yeah, why don't we email people who work in this field?
So this is all, you said you used ChatGPT-4, I believe?
As the LLM that the orchestrator of all of these models actually. This is the AutoGen framework, though.
Got it.
Where you put in a task and the orchestrator has a little template there and it fills it in underneath. What have we learned? What do we know? What's the steps that we're going to do? It uses reasoning to try and unpack the task and decides who to answer. Okay, we need information. Let's go. And there's self-reflection.
A dialogue of machines, it sounds like. Really?
That's exactly what it was. And the humanness of it was frightening because
I was about to say, that's almost scary.
It was scary to these robots and being very polite to each other.
You said the last was, why don't we email?
Yeah, so let's email researchers in this field. And the orchestrator said, that's a good idea. Can you draft an email and a template for keeping track of the responses? The assistant goes, yes. I read the email template. It said, very human again. I'm a researcher in this field and I'm looking for... The thing it was looking for was so trivial that it wouldn't make sense to do this.
Sure.
But the creativity that this framework had was both exciting but also terrifying.
Sure. So now, for the listeners, I'll drop the link into to that article. I think that's fascinating and I appreciate very much you talking about that. Let's talk a little bit about the future. You've glimpsed it, you're working towards it. We've discussed it today. In the deepest recesses of your mind, what do you think is coming next, Angel? What do you see down the road in the path for marketers? Obviously, you've done everything from augmented reality. You've dabbled in so many things. Talk to us a little bit about what you envision coming down the line.
I think we're increasingly going to be using a lot of these tools. The strategy side is worrying to me as a strategist because I can see that one of the most interesting things, and this was a really moment of illumination for me as well, when ChatGPT first came out, I was long interested in natural language processing. So I thought, yeah, this is my moment now, I can do this stuff. But what I hadn't grasped at the beginning was the sense that what is encoded in the large language models is not just language, it's also human behavior, and strategy is encoded in there. So when I was
directly to the LLM.
Yeah. So when I see, for example, my daughter has a brand on social media, and she uses ChatGPT as a social media consultant. The strategy is what she's looking for. And it's a conversation that she has. I've done this, I've done that. And ChatGPT says, okay, try this, try that. So it's an iterative relationship that she has with a strategic consultant. So my view is that there's a whole bunch of people who want to have access to strategists. So that's what they're going to be asking ChatGPT for, that kind of consultancy. And so where do I add value? And I think it's in healthcare, we're okay because of the complexity of what we do. I think we would benefit. So for example, in rare diseases, what you're talking about are very small numbers of patients. So having access to identify them and then being able to use AI to engage with them. I think whenever I think of small numbers, though, I think AI is a little bit harder to deal with. But still, using what has happened before, which would be knowledge that the LLM may be able to provide. I think we've got to work together with it. So I suppose what I'm really saying is that it'll be a bit like media, where we've long had access to data, intelligent data. And so you just choose a segment by pressing a button. You might select engage channels, and it's all already programmed in. So increasingly, there'll be ways for us as marketers to do that kind of thing. And so the strategy bit will be built in to these models, but we'll still need to sit above to validate and to provide the inputs, I think, is where we're going with this. And to thinking about storytelling and brand, that's the bit that we will have to build a brand. You need to be consistent. And that's where AIs are not great. So we're going to need to be those gatekeepers of what is this on brand? Is this not on brand? Because that creativity that's there, it can help with ideation, but increasingly we'll be asking it to produce multiple variants of creative, but will it be on brand? And there's also something very important about creativity itself. The more we use these LLMs, we need to be able to still provide that spark of newness that only humans can do, because they're just a reflection. They're looking back at what has happened before. And so what's next? We're not going to get that from an LLM.
What a great analogy. They're but a reflection, and they're looking back. I think that's key to what we're communicating really through this podcast. You've been around, you've nurtured and fostered good storytelling throughout your career.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that as it coincides with data, because we know storytelling without that data becomes pointless in a marketing career. What do you see AI evolving to as a storytelling tool? Many people are using it for copywriting, not so much in healthcare pharma. However, they're leaning on it heavily. But talk about, especially in healthcare, where we know those compelling narratives have to balance that precision and accuracy.
Yeah, I do think we are seeing that LLMs can create impressive stories. It's just where we are not yet is the constraints. And as a brand strategist, we need to tell a very specific story about a very specific product with very specific benefits. And so I do think that whilst ideation is definitely on the table, it can get you started. Another way I find interesting is to do something, but then get the LLM to refine it or to fill any gaps or identify any gaps. So I think that is something where they can help at the moment. I do see, though, in the future, where we will be able to constrain it and to guide it in a more specific way than we are able to today. But the overarching umbrella, I think we're going to be seeing more branches below as we're going to be able to use one-to-one marketing to deliver specific messages to micro segments. But there's still that overarching brand campaign that we will have to identify and create. I say identify because increasingly it will be about seeing reference material.
Yes, of course.
And having, do you remember that McCann example?
Vaguely.
They had trained it on a specific award. So they wanted to say, oh, let's write a creative brief that will win an award, which is often something in agencies we're looking to do, besides the objectives, of course. So anyway, they had trained it on the entries for a specific award, and then was able then they brought it actually looked like a Hoover to an office in the video to have it then produce a creative brief. And so some of the properties around the type of music and all that were present in it. So I think where those are data-driven insights, those are really valuable and interesting. But still, the full creative brief is not something that right now we can let an AI do. It can certainly say in the past, these are the points that made the most difference. And those can be many data inputs. But yeah, I still think we've got something to say in storytelling.
Oh, I imagine. And we definitely do. I can attest to that in my perspective as well. Taking a step back, Angel, looking over the progression of your career.
Yeah.
What do you think enabled you to stay ahead of the curve? I know a lot of marketers listening will lean in, everyone wanting to be highly relevant and efficient in what they do and serve their companies. What are some things that have enabled you to stay ahead of the curve?
I think I was at the right place at the right time for this shift where digital started to come forward. It wasn't just the brand strategist and the brand, it was the AOR brand team that were at the high table. And I think increasingly pharma companies specifically, but wider healthcare too, have become more and more interested in data. And I was there. So as soon as they were thinking, I need more evidence, the tools that you're using at Creative AOR are they feel old fashioned to me because you're not talking enough about data. You're not talking enough about the customer journey. Right. So at that point, the customer journey became the tool then that allowed me to be at the high table and for them to have less power. I guess there was a bit of a challenge, and then the customer journey and that narrative around data became much more compelling to pharma companies as a marketing story, as how we will achieve your goals. It's not through just thinking about your segments in a overarching way as you would do with a brand campaign. Typically, you have to find a prioritized segment and then create something that makes sense for them. But of course, it will work with the others, is what you might say. But then I was there saying, no, we can't do that. We have to look at the data strategy. Who are the segments? Where might we reach them? Can we reach? How are we going to reach them? All those components. Say, yeah, obviously we've got to have the right story. And I was able to talk about the creativity. So I didn't sound like an analyst techie, which would have felt like, oh no, we need a powerful story. It needs to be emotional. It needs to move the hearts and minds of people. We can't just put technology in, because there was also
able to bridge the gap and tell the story, yet understand the complexities, the intricacies behind the technical side of it, which I think is really a gift.
I don't know. It's just about seeing the two needed to be there together. When we're slipping now more, as I've been saying, towards the technical. Okay, we'll get the data story, and that is lowering in priority. But if anyone thinks about it for more than a moment, they know that we need that as well. It needs to be powerful, and you need strong, creative people to do that.
Absolutely. A couple last questions. If you look at the industry now, and you've been attending conferences, you've been speaking, you've been making a true difference in disease treatment, what are things you're hearing that you believe collectively marketers and other agents in the industry are trying to solve for?
Yeah.
What are some of the clear, very poignant problems that you see in the industry, Angel, that you think we need to, number one, dedicate more time and resources to solve, or perhaps that have always been there and that we need to learn how to move beyond?
Yeah. I think people in pharma companies are starting to get the right infrastructure. There is still an issue with the brand teams who have the money where they're in a different universe often to the people doing the infrastructure, and there's still a chasm between them. The brand people are not thinking in terms of, okay, this is what I've got, this is how I'm going to use it yet, though they're starting to. And I think once they start making it part of the brand planning process and really buying into it, it's not just, oh, that technical stuff over there that I'll just pass it down the line to somebody to implement, is where they're thinking. One of the clients that we worked on wanted to help the markets, their affiliates, to do the brand planning process in a more modern way. And so we built a model based on what percentages of your investment should be on specific brands and specific channels. And so I think that was quite helpful. There's still a bit of resistance to doing this because it takes away the agency of the marketer, him or herself, because it's just like putting numbers in a spreadsheet. And so there's going to be resistance to change around that. But as people do start to embrace the customer journey and these kind of their infrastructure and get on board with it, and those teams become less siloed, I think we're going to get smarter marketing. Absolutely.
I agree. I think that's definitely something that's in the future. What happens when those AI, LLM driven strategies don't achieve, you mentioned this a little bit before, don't achieve the results that are expected? Perhaps when so much faith had been put into this intelligence and it just yielded a dismal result, and how you reacted to that.
I've got an example, and this was a brand. It was in the dental space, and this is a classic thing with the customer journey where you think, okay, there's no awareness of the category, so we need to make people aware of the category first, and then we'll go in with the product benefits, the brand. Once they've made a decision, yes, I'm interested in this category, I will now, which brand is the one I might use? Classic stuff. So we did all the planning along that way. And then we saw the AI, the algorithm, reported back that the product benefit bits were the things that were doing well. And so you're scratching your head thinking, these people are not even convinced and that is the major behavioral shift that we wanted to do, is for doctors, or they call them doctors, but they're actually dentists, to use aligners. Because typically that would be the world of the orthodontist remit, not a dentist. And so the big shift we were trying to make was to get dentists to say, no, I can do this too in my practice. And so we wanted to try and say, yes, dentist, you can move teeth yourself, was the first behavior change we were looking to do. And the second one then is, okay, so which brand are you going to use?
Sure.
But that didn't play out. And so then you're scratching your head thinking, okay, so is it the innovation bits that these people are most interested in that we were shouting about in the product benefits? Because the algorithm was spilling over. It was showing them both the imagery from the first step of the customer journey, but also the next. So we hadn't said, because the algorithm tends to prefer more creative. So you create a pool of it and then you have to let it do that kind of thing. The interesting thing for us was then, okay, so do we change our strategy? We've done all this planning, creative made this way.
Right.
So then when it's the AI shows you something else, it's good because you're getting more insights, but it's taken a lot to get to that point where you've got creative being shown to.
Do you pitch that and start over, or do you continue somehow?
Yes, exactly.
No, that's great. What a wonderful conversation, Angel.
Yeah.
I appreciate you very much coming on to the show, sharing your expertise. You may get many questions from our followers, and I hope you do. Are there any parting words or pieces of advice that you would like to offer the community as they begin to explore and enter this journey in using
Mhm.
AI in new, innovative ways?
I do have some closing words on this. I believe that we must go in feet first with this because, as I said, AI is only a reflection of what has come before. And we need to be there as the stewards. We need to be there as the tool users. We need to be there as the leaders. Otherwise, in healthcare, for example, there's a lot of tensions, financial tensions to replace care with robots, for example. And we need to be there to make sure that we're not changing the face of care, dehumanizing it. We need to be there to make sure that we are prioritizing what's most important. We cannot serve the needs of everybody with humans, of course, but we need to make sure that everybody gets enough human experiences. We cannot just let it happen, I guess is what I'm saying. We need to be the leaders there.
Be the catalysts and the leaders. That's
Yeah.
great. That's great.
Yeah.
Thanks again. And I wish you nothing but the very best.
Well, thank you. You too.
Thank you.
That wraps up our inspiring conversation with Angel Brown, CEO of Locomotion. Her insights into the intersection of AI, innovation, and marketing have given us so much to think about as we navigate this rapidly evolving landscape. Let me leave you with 3 key takeaways from today's discussion. First, AI is not here to replace creativity. It's here to enhance it. Angel emphasized the importance of leveraging AI for ideation and efficiency while still ensuring that human creativity remains the cornerstone of brand storytelling. Second, the power of AI lies in its ability to create personalized one-to-one marketing at scale. However, as Angel highlighted, success depends on having a robust data strategy and understanding your audience deeply, not just relying on algorithms to do the heavy lifting. Finally, marketers must be proactive stewards of technology. As Angel pointed out, our role is to ensure that AI enhances, not replaces, the human element in industries like healthcare, where empathy and trust are vital. For those tuning in, don't forget to subscribe, share this episode, and reach out with your questions. Let's continue exploring the exciting ways AI and human creativity can work together to shape the future of marketing. See you next time on the Coactive Marketing Podcast.